Thank you so much. My name is Oliver Jones, and Gugu Mbatha-Raw, star of Belle.
Hi, hello, thank you.
So we just finished watching that extraordinary film. I know you have a relationship with that painting that is at the center of that film that predates you being involved in a movie about this. Can you talk about that and what that painting was to you and means to you now?
Yeah, it's crazy really, because I first, when I first went to drama school, I went to RADA in London when I was 18, and I rented a flat in North London, sort of about 5 minutes away from Hampstead Heath, without even realising it, the exact same heath where Kenwood House exists. And so on my weekends off, I used to walk on the heath, and I wandered into Kenwood House one day and saw the postcard of the painting. And I'd recently met the producer, Damien Jones, just for sort of a general meeting. And all of that time, as I say, as a student, I'd just been kind of hanging out on Hampstead Heath and thinking it was such a beautiful place. And then I heard about Dido and the painting, and I actually didn't get to see the real painting because I missed, there was an abolition of slavery exhibition where the painting had been brought down to Kenwood. But the painting actually is in Scotland at Scone Palace. And myself, I finally saw the real painting with Sarah Gadon, who plays Elizabeth. We wanted to go as a sort of research trip beforehand, but because of our schedules being so crazy, we couldn't go. But after we finished shooting the movie, we both went up to Scotland together and went to see the painting together. And it was an amazing moment after sort of inhabiting these characters for 7 weeks. And myself sort of having had this postcard up in my bedroom for 7 years. It was quite special to see the painting in the flesh.
So what do you see when you see that painting? I mean, how does it make you feel seeing it now after having been journeyed with this woman, as this woman?
I mean, I remember when I first saw it, I was just struck by the title, actually, underneath, which just said, Lady Elizabeth Murray and attendant or something. Like Dido wasn't mentioned, she didn't have a name. I think before that it had just been called Lady Elizabeth Murray. It didn't even acknowledge Dido. But the first time I saw it, I was just struck by her facial expression, her sort of mischievous, vivacious gaze that was sort of directly out to the viewer. And, you know, Elizabeth looked so demure and sort of classical, and Dido sort of seemed to be darting through the background.
It's like she refuses to be pinned down. Like,
yeah, exactly. And she was dressed in all these sort of sumptuous silks. You know, she's sort of, in the painting, we sort of take a little bit of artistic license. Amma didn't like the idea of her wearing a turban, but that apparently was to reference John Lindsay's expeditions and to India, and to show, you know, her in these sumptuous Indian silks. But she was dressed in a way that was so privileged, I guess. It was just so refreshing to me to see a girl, you know, of mixed heritage in a historical painting, not in a subservient role, not as a slave, not as a servant. You know, she just, as I say, seemed vivacious and a near equal to the other character.
Well, now a lot of young women, they read the novels of Jane Austen, and it lights feelings. And what about you? I mean, was it the same for you, or did you sort of have that extra thing where you thought, well, where would I have fit into this world? Where would people like me, a mixed race person, or were you able to enjoy those books and those stories regardless of?
Absolutely. I think they're such universal stories, and
right.
For me, you know, yeah, I loved Pride and Prejudice. I love Sense and Sensibility. I grew up on the film adaptations, the TV adaptations. You know, a good story is a good story, and a good female heroine is a good female heroine. And Jane Austen is such an amazing writer. You know, I never thought, oh, why can't I be in that? I always just... I still imagine myself as Elizabeth Bennet. It wasn't a problem for me. You know, I was still sort of there with it. You know, I think that that's just universal storytelling. It's not about race. It's about, you know, the soul.
Now, I know one of the scenes that really moved your director was the mirror scene early on. And it's kind of a devastating scene to watch. Can you talk about that scene and kind of what led up to it for you and sort of how you got to that place? Because it's almost a little hard to watch. It's very emotional, the scene in the mirror. And of course, it comes right after she's been looking at the painting. You know, the representation, sort of the idea of representation is kind of brought into that moment as well.
Yeah, well, for Amma Asante, the director, that's actually... and she wouldn't mind me saying it, but that's actually a scene from her own life. That's something that you know, she personally experienced.
Well, that's a lot of responsibility for
you. I only found that out after we'd shot it, thank goodness, because I think if I'd have known that, I would have been so crippled with the pressure. But I have to say, that was the scene that I was most nervous about. It was written beautifully, you know, it was very viscerally written, and I knew that it was a deep scene, and I remember even early in the process, I think some of the financiers had asked for it to be removed, you know. And I remember having a conversation, this was before we shot it, but when they were looking at the script, and I remember having a conversation with Amma, just being like, no, that's the whole point of, you know, of seeing that, you know, for the first time behind the facade of this beautiful, sumptuous world that she's inhabiting. If you take that scene away, you know, it just becomes kind of fluff, and there's no real conflict.
Well, her journey means a lot less without that scene.
Absolutely. So, you know, I was quite emphatic. I mean, Amma also, you know, because of her personal connection to that experience, was emphatic about keeping it. But yeah, for me, I was very nervous about approaching that scene. We were shooting it on the final day of the whole shoot. So I felt like I had it hanging over me for 7 weeks. And, and you know, we were exhausted, obviously. You know, it was a very intense schedule in the autumn, about this time of year in England, where the weather is sort of unpredictable and you're wearing sort of Wellington boots underneath your fancy dresses, and trying to sort of stay warm. And yeah, I remember just having to be very much in the zone. I was listening to a lot of music, had my earbuds in the whole day, and had to sort of disconnect really from the crew. And for the rest of the time, I'd been very sort of communicative, but for that, I had to really be very quiet and remove myself. And I think we did 3 takes. I think the one that's on the screen is the first one. And yeah, I think there were a couple of cameras. I think obviously because of the way that we were approaching it, Amma knew that there was only so many times I would be able to do that scene without sort of having marks or scratches on my face. Or so it was sort of important, and she was very helpful in making the environment very conducive to just being respectful and focused.
Now, what kind of blueprint did Amma Asante give you for her journey? Like, what did how did she describe Dido's, I guess, emotional and personal journey to sort of help you figure it out and help you realize what was on the page?
Well, I wish you could meet Amma. I wish you.
I do too.
Oh, have you met her?
No, I'd love to.
Well, I wish she was here, because as soon as you meet Amma, you know, you understand that she is, and it's there on the screen. I mean, she's a deeply romantic person, and you know, she has a wonderful aesthetic for beauty. You know, she's just very detailed. She shared so many experiences of her own life in in directing us, she would be sort of quite anecdotal and talk about, sort of the contemporary moments that might help us relate to something, even though, it's sort of in the past. And we really plotted in the rehearsal period this sort of transition from girl to woman. That was sort of what we spent a lot of time talking about, because obviously the whole thing filmed out of context. So, the moments when Dido sort of goes from saying, as you wish, sir, to Lord Mansfield, and then it becomes as I wish when she sort of, stands up to Lady Ashford. And that transition was something that we really tried to sort of plot as an arc for her evolution. We talked a lot about humiliation and sort of the nuances of the impact of receiving those humiliations, be it not being allowed to dine with the family, be it just a small slip of the tongue about her mother from James Ashford, that in a moment that you just, if you don't have self-confidence to actually challenge someone in that moment, but those small humiliations build and build. So sort of using that as ammunition, for when she can finally erupt.
It's funny that you mentioned that scene, because the way she responds, I hear some sound somewhere and she kind of escapes from that moment. She would not have responded the same way by the end of the movie. She would have said something completely different, I think.
Absolutely. And again, with Amo, it's all about, instinct versus social conditioning, and at what point do we actually finally listen to our instincts as opposed to just go along with what society has told us, the codes of conduct, and especially in the 18th century, a very mannered society. And we talked a lot in the rehearsals about status, and we had some etiquette coaching classes where we would learn about the bows and the curtsies, and how, if you were at a formal dinner, how you'd hold your cutlery, how you'd eat soup, and and who was the highest status person in the room, and that every sort of social interaction then sort of operated around that person. So yeah, it was really sort of threading in all of those different elements.
Did it stick with you? Did you find yourself curtsying at the Starbucks? When you were, that kind of thing?
We did, after our etiquette, we used to sort of, when we'd see each other on set, curtsy to each other. I'd often sort of do a little curtsy to Tom Wilkinson, just because he's Tom Wilkinson. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I sort of, the only thing I wish that we had, in that Jane Austen land, was a dance.
Right, yeah.
That's the only thing that we didn't get to have, because we talked about those, like you see in the movie of Pride and Prejudice, and how you can convey so much, in terms of the status and the physicality. So that was the only thing that I missed.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Now, talk about what's the side effects of spending 10 hours in a corset?
Yeah, I mean, the side effects are that you do end up just sort of getting a bit grouchy unless you have lots of squirrel snacks. And I ended up...
Does that really help?
Yeah, I ended up sort of, squirreling away sort of almonds and bananas and little sort of snacks to get me through the day, because you really can't have a massive lunch. It's sort of, you end up sort of eating all the time, but never anything huge, because the idea of sort of taking off the corset in the lunch break and then, relaxing and then having to have it sort of put back on again is even worse. So yeah, it was pretty intense, and myself and all the ladies, sort of bonded, especially me and Sarah. We loved the scenes where we got to be in our nightgowns and just kind of let it all hang out. But they really give you sort of, as an actor, the corset just does so much for your physicality, and it really was there, and moving in those dresses. You can't really bend over to do up your own shoelaces. You become slightly breathless if you go up the stairs too quickly. And you suddenly understand really. On a very visceral level, what it would have felt like to be a woman, and just I always felt sort of the metaphor of being sort of constrained and repressed was, you know, wearing a corset for 10 days, you got it. 10 hours, you understood it. And that was kind of really helpful to sort of fight against, almost.
Well, what's so amazing about this movie is all these different constraints keep playing off of each other in this fascinating way that you never quite expect. You know, the race and caste and gender and all these things. You know, the scene with Bet where you guys kind of confront each other is an incredible scene. You know, it almost feels like you guys have lightsabers and you're just going after each other. You know, you're poor, you know, but you're black, and you're going back and forth.
Yeah.
It's very, it's amazing the way those, I guess, three qualities kind of interact and played off of each other.
Yeah, well, Amma was also very keen to sort of emphasize the nature of sisterhood, I think, in this film. And she has a sister herself. And, you know, she directed me towards Sense and Sensibility, you know, the Dashwood sisters. And, you know, I'm such a huge fan of Emma Thompson, you know, and Kate Winslet in that film adaptation. But just the idea of showing a female relationship on screen that, although she wanted to see how much it could take, you know, that bond, and you know, even though they are competitive in some respects, they still go through that journey and they still love each other. And I think we don't see that.
Sisters are. Yeah, I mean, that's what you are. I mean, and this is not just a tale of an unorthodox woman. It's an unorthodox family and an unorthodox family unit, and it kind of says something about what families are. You know, it's never always or often just the mom and the pa. You know, it's often an assemblage of cousins that are sisters and
absolutely.
You know,
and I mean, Lady Mary, you know,
yes.
for example, you know, the magnificent Penelope Wilton, you know, the predicament for an unmarried woman in that period was, you know, she wasn't really allowed to dine with the family in company either, because she was considered a spinster, you know, so the women's place, and yet she was still part of the family. And just the idea of, you know, Lord Mansfield, what a pioneer he was in many ways. In you know, obviously in the judicial system, but in sort of commissioning the painting in the first place, that was such a kind of radical thing, you know, showing his love for Dido and immortalizing her in many ways.
And it helps a great deal that you had those incredible actors. I mean, Penelope Wilton, she's one of the funniest women in the world, and she's wonderful in this film.
Yeah, you know, I'd worked with her before in Hamlet on stage a few years ago. She was playing Gertrude, and I was playing Ophelia in a production in the West End, and you know, obviously that play is not really a very joyful experience. So I didn't really get to appreciate Penelope's comic timing until working with her in this, and it was really wonderful to sort of go through the Hamlet experience and then almost to discover a whole new Penelope really with her, you know, on this, and such a masterclass in comic acting, really.
Now you've been Ophelia opposite Jude Law's Hamlet. You have been Juliet opposite Andrew Garfield's Romeo. So you know something about creating palpable sexual tension with really hot, desirable guys. Is that a fair statement? And you get to do a little bit of that in this movie too. But what did those experiences teach you about, I guess, creating chemistry, expressing desirability, that kind of thing?
In Shakespeare, in the theatre experience?
Yeah, and
I mean, you know, Romeo and Juliet is some of the most romantic love poetry ever written. Just saying those lines, you know, just even reading them, you can't not feel something. And, you know, I mean, Andrew is such an amazing actor, and we did that when we were 22 in a theatre in the Round in Manchester, you know, both of us about 6 months out of drama school. So, you know, I feel really fortunate to be able to have worked with some really committed, intense actors, you know, and Jude equally in Hamlet, you know, brings so much charisma and intensity to the role. You know, it helps. It helps.
This is a question from Amy Walther. In researching the time period, what surprised you most about similarities and differences between now and then regarding race relations?
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, for me, we did a lot of research, in this period into the Zong case. And what was kind of amazing is that, I knew that you could make money from selling slaves. But what I didn't know is that, in the case of the Zong, that you could make money from killing slaves.
Right.
And the idea of the insurance case, just how deeply corrupt that was, and the value of human life. Obviously slavery is wrong and always has been, but the idea that people were able and did make money from killing slaves, I didn't know that.
Right. And it's difficult to watch this film and to think that the film that won the Oscar last year, 12 Years a Slave, comes after historically, this film takes place, that this was a problem that would continue on.
Absolutely, and I think,
devastating.
And I think it really sheds a light on the British involvement in the slave trade, because even though, obviously this is a very different film to 12 Years a Slave, and as much as that film really captured the visceral experience of being a slave, I think a lot of people forget that the UK was so instrumental in masterminding the legislation that allowed the slave trade to happen. So it's sort of a different side of the same coin in many respects, and the sort of high society that profited from it.
Now we're sitting here not far from all of the 6 major film studios are all surrounding us, and I'm sure that everyone is sitting in this audience like wondering, why isn't this an American film? Why aren't these studios making stories like this? Why is it taking a British film to tell a different kind of story and a more diverse story? But from what I understand, this was not an easy film to make over there either.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And I mean, we were acquired by Fox Searchlight, the incredible Fox Searchlight, once the film had been made. But Damien Jones, the producer, had, was one of the first people to have the idea to make this into a film. As I say, over 7-8 years ago, I know that his wife saw the painting at the exhibition. I think his wife and his mum both argue as to which one of them told him about Dido, and they both want to take credit for discovering.
You already had the
story.
Postcard.
Yeah.
I'm sure you tell them that.
Yeah. He really has been on this journey with this project for such a long time. I think initially it was going to be an HBO miniseries, and then that fell out of favor or whatever, and then I know Miss Saga was writing the script, and then she had some ill health, and so there were all sorts of things that delayed the production, and I think it was just really difficult for him to find financing with a period drama with a mixed race heroine at the center of it. I think it just because it hadn't been done before. It was just, people are often nervous, I think, to put money into things that sadly are new or different, and haven't been sort of proven already to make money. But Damien is incredibly tenacious, really, really didn't give up on the project. And then, it was really after The Iron Lady, which he produced with Meryl Streep, and that obviously when she won the Oscar for that, having that the momentum of the success of that project that really helped him kind of garner a bit more momentum for Belle. And Amma, of course, she just had such a crystal clear vision, and she's a very dynamic person. So.
You call her a force of nature. Can you be more specific?
Well, she's just, she is so articulate.
Yeah. She's
glamorous in an age, I think, when you don't really often meet a female director that hasn't, what am I trying to say? How do I say this? She doesn't try to be a guy. She is very feminine. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think so often, quite understandably so, you know, women in positions of power in the industry have had to sort of man up a little bit to be taken seriously in a man's world. And she's unabashedly feminine and strong. And, you know, she wears red lipstick and high heels, but she's also, you know, she can talk about, you know, eloquently about this period. And, you know, she's sort of a goddess, really. I mean, she's incredible.
Unfortunately, we're still living in a time where there are too few women who are making films and who are directing films. So it's a statistical unlikelihood to be in a film with, you know, they're directed by a woman. So you're fortunate just in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have to say, I have been really fortunate in that I've worked with 4 female directors in the last 2 years. And actually, in film, I've worked more with female directors than I have with male directors. So for me, at least, even though it's an anomaly, I'm obviously greedily hogging all the few female directors that there are.
Do you get really excited when you find out that a woman is attached to? I mean, what does a woman director bring that's maybe different or unique? I mean, obviously every person is unique in what they bring.
Well, I think that's the thing. That is the honest thing. And I think, you know, I was just at an event this week, you know, celebrating women in Hollywood. And I think it's so important to celebrate women in Hollywood, but and female directors, but I also think that's an umbrella term, and it's a big label. And you know, Amma Asante is so different to Gina Prince Bythewood.
Right.
Gina Prince Bythewood is a completely different person to Courtney Hunt, and Courtney Hunt is a completely different person to Lana Wachowski. You can't put them all together and say, you know, these people bring the same experience. You know, it's
Catherine Bigelow is like none of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, people wouldn't say, oh, how do you find working with male directors?
That's right.
You know, so obviously, as for me personally, with a female director and a female writer-director, you know, like Amma or Gina, I think it's more about point of view. And I think that in my experience with these recent projects, you know, obviously for me it's the first time that I've had a lead role, but the perspective is told through the woman's eyes, and I think that it's really about the layers that you get from a female director that you may not get in the same way. You know, the multifaceted nature of the character you may not get from a male director in the same way.
Now, you brought up this interesting week that you're having. This Women in Hollywood event was from Elle magazine. You were among 8 women on the cover of Elle magazine. The women included Jessica Lange. They included
Annette Bening.
Annette Bening, yes, and you looking incredibly fierce and absolutely crazy glamorous. I highly suggest you guys Google and take it, or better go to the newsstand and buy this magazine. I have to ask you about that photo shoot. You just look absolutely incredible, and like in no way that I've ever seen you. You just look so fierce in that picture.
Well, thank you. I mean, you know, that was thanks to a lot of hair and makeup and, you know, some airbrushing and photography genius. You know, I don't get out of bed and look like that. But it was really, really fun. You know, it was really a wonderful experience. And, you know, I'm so thankful for Elle to have put me with these really experienced actresses. And it's kind of funny to see your face on the cover of a magazine. You know, I mean, like it was for me when I first saw this poster. You know, you sort of just go... but it's you know, it's wonderful, and it's great to celebrate, you know.
But that wasn't even my point, because what I wanted to get to was that today you were nominated for a Gotham Award, Best Actress for the film Behind the Light.
Beyond.
Excuse me, Beyond the Light.
Beyond.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So. What an amazing couple of days. I can't imagine that you had many days in a row like the last few days.
No, not really. That's why I'm slightly losing my voice, because I've been talking a lot about the movie and Beyond the Lights as well.
Aren't you also making a movie with Will Smith right now? Yeah, just like everybody's week.
Yeah, we're about to start. I was in Pittsburgh last week for some costume fittings and some rehearsals. We're about to start in a couple of weeks. It's called Concussion at the moment, and it's about the doctor that first discovered the link between brain injuries and football.
Mm-hmm. American football.
American football, yes, the NFL, the NFL.
But I'm just wondering how you're going to recover. No, I imagine no other week in your life is going to be as exciting as this one, or maybe there's a few coming up in the next few months. We'll see, I guess.
Who knows? I mean, it's wonderful, and it's kind of crazy because you do these films, you know, and you go into this process of researching these characters, and you know. Putting on the corset, having the dance lessons, having the singing lessons, you know, going off to the Isle of Man and doing a scene in a country house with Tom Wilkinson, you know, and then suddenly, you know, all this time later, you know, they come out in the same year or, you know, within months of each other. And it's a very different process, the whole sort of talking about the movie as opposed to, I mean, I'm still really learning that, you know, I mean, my favorite bit is the acting bit, but then it's obviously you hope that people get to see what you did all those months ago.
Well, hopefully us journalist folks are making this bit not so painful for you. As a last question, I'm a teacher, and I have my students here from Emerson College. I teach a diversity journalism class.
Hi, Emerson College.
And I wanted to ask you about that word and that idea of diversity and what it means to you. It's kind of a buzzword, and it means different things to different people. But when you hear that word and think about the idea of diversity, what does it mean to you and in your life and to the life that you've led?
It's funny. I think I've only really heard of that word very recently. Here in Hollywood as a sort of, do you know what I mean?
Right, like a buzzword.
Like a word, I don't know, what does it mean, like to have more brown people, more, like what does it really mean? I don't know.
I don't think anybody really knows that yet. That's why I asked you.
Diversity. I get, people always ask me stuff like this, like, you know, like the idea of positive discrimination, and, you know, I don't know really. You know, I think it's great to tell stories. You know, I think there are so many stories that have not been told, you know, Belle being one. And I think, you know, it's about having a voice. I guess if diversity means anything, it's about everybody being allowed to have their voice and having a platform for it to be heard, I suppose.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a thrill. And congratulations on this amazing week, and I'm sure you're going to have many, many more to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you.